My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a freelance graphic designer. It was almost midnight, and the house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of my laptop and the distant chirping of crickets. I was deep into a late-night project, tweaking fonts for a new client's logo, when my phone buzzed on the desk beside me. A text. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be my sister, Jess, who often sent me memes at ungodly hours. But it wasn't Jess. It was Mark. My husband. The message was short, stark, and utterly chilling. Lock the door. My first reaction was a jolt of pure, primal fear. My heart hammered against my ribs. Lock the door? Why? Was someone outside? Had he seen something? I immediately looked towards the heavy brass knocker on our front door, a housewarming gift from Mark's grandmother, a symbol of security I'd always cherished. Then, as I reached for my phone to call him, a cold wave of realization washed over me, replacing fear with a deeper, more profound dread. Mark wasn't home. He was 30,000 feet up, halfway across the country on a red-eye flight to Seattle for an aerospace conference. There was no way he could have sent that text. Not from his phone, not from the air. The text wasn't from Mark, but it was about Mark. And it was a warning. I didn't know it then, but that single, impossible message was the first thread unraveling a tightly woven tapestry of secrets my husband had kept from me, pulling me into a dangerous world I never knew existed. It would force me to confront not just an external threat, but the very foundation of my marriage. To understand the chilling significance of those 3 words, I have to go back to how Mark and I met, and the life we'd built. Mark and I met in our senior year of college. He was an engineering student, brilliant and driven, with a quiet intensity that I found captivating. I was studying graphic design, drawn to the creative and the visual. We were opposites in many ways, he meticulously logical, I intuitively artistic, but we complemented each other. We built a life together in a quiet suburb of Phoenix, a small, comfortable house with a patch of desert garden in the back. Mark worked as an aerospace engineer, a job that often required him to travel for conferences or to oversee critical project phases. He was good at it, respected, and his career was always his primary focus. He was private, yes, but I attributed it to the highly classified nature of his work. I trusted him implicitly. Our home, with its sturdy walls and that beautiful, solid brass knocker, felt like our sanctuary. It was where we started our mornings with coffee, shared quiet evenings, and planned our future. I'd always felt safe there, wrapped in the assumption of our shared, transparent life. Mark handled most of the bigger financial decisions, being the more numbers person, while I managed the daily household budget and our shared calendar. It was a division of labor that worked for us, or so I thought. A few weeks before the text, a small detail snagged at my subconscious. I'd picked up Mark's phone to check the weather, mine was charging, and saw a missed call notification on his screen. It was from an unfamiliar number, late at night, around 2 a.m. When I asked him about it over breakfast, he didn't even look up from his oatmeal. Probably a wrong number, Sarah. You know how those telemarketers are, no respect for time zones. His voice was flat, a little too quick to dismiss it. I let it go, but a tiny knot of unease formed in my stomach. It wasn't like Mark to be so curt. Then, about 10 days later, a package arrived. It was small, nondescript, wrapped in plain brown paper, with no return address. It was addressed only to Mark. He was home that day, working from his study. I brought it in from the porch, curious. He took it from me, his movements a little too swift, a little too guarded. He opened it in the kitchen, turning his back slightly. I only caught a fleeting glimpse of the contents, something small, metallic, glinting under the kitchen lights. It looked like a very intricate, specialized tool, or maybe a high-tech USB drive. Just a work prototype, confidential, he said, already tucking it into his briefcase. Nothing to worry about. The way he avoided my gaze, the immediate secrecy, felt like a small breach in the open communication we usually shared. I told myself it was just his job, that I was being overly sensitive. The next incident was harder to ignore. I was reconciling our joint credit card statement, something I did every month, when I noticed a recurring charge. It was for a P.O. box rental, about $35 a month, in a city I didn't recognize, Mesa, Arizona. Mark never traveled to Mesa for work. It was a city known for its sprawling suburbs, not for aerospace innovation. When I questioned him, he sighed, rubbed his temples. It's a new project, Sarah. Requires secure mail, off-site. Company policy. He was vague, evasive, and Med annoyed that I was even asking. This was a significant crack in our shared financial transparency. He'd always been so meticulous, so open about every expense. The P.O. box felt like a deliberate act of concealment. I started to wonder if his privacy was actually something more. The final straw before the text, the thing that truly started to make me feel like I was living with a stranger, was the late-night phone activity. I'd woken up several times to the faint glow of his phone from the other side of the bed. He'd be texting rapidly, his brow furrowed, then he'd quickly put the phone down, sometimes even deleting messages as he did. One night, I heard him take a call in the hallway, his voice a low murmur, barely audible. When he came back to bed, he looked tired, almost haunted. "Everything okay?" I'd asked, my voice thick with sleep. "Just work," he'd mumbled, turning away. His work was starting to feel like a shroud, not a career. I felt a growing sense of isolation, a dull ache of worry, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront him directly. I kept telling myself it was stress, that he was just under pressure. But the lock the door text, sent from 30,000 feet up, shattered all my carefully constructed rationalizations. It wasn't stress. It was danger. And it was real. My mind raced, connecting the dots, the missed calls, the mysterious package, the P.O. box in Mesa, the secretive phone calls. Mark wasn't just private, he was involved in something far more serious than I could have imagined. Someone else had access to his phone, or someone was impersonating him, sending a warning. It wasn't a threat to me, but a warning for me. I immediately went to the front door, the heavy brass knocker cold beneath my fingers. I double-checked the deadbolt, then the chain. I moved through the house, checking every window, every lock. The house that had always felt like a sanctuary now felt porous, vulnerable. I tried calling Mark again, but as expected, it went straight to voicemail. I even called the airline, giving his flight number, and confirmed he was indeed still airborne, hours from landing. The confirmation only deepened the mystery and my fear. I knew I couldn't wait for him to land. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I remembered Mark had an old, secondary phone he kept in his desk drawer, mostly for old contacts or as a backup. I found it, powered it on. Miraculously, it was still logged into his cloud. I started digging. It wasn't easy. Mark was careful. But my graphic design work often involved recovering corrupted files or digging through metadata, so I had some basic digital forensics skills. I found a hidden folder, not immediately obvious, disguised as an old project archive. Inside, there were encrypted messages, but also a few unencrypted notes. They talked about deliveries, package drops, and repeated references to the ledger. One name kept appearing, Silas. And a date, 2 days from now. Silas. The name felt like a cold stone in my gut. And 2 days from now. The urgency was palpable. Mark wasn't just involved, he was deep in something dangerous, something that clearly had a timeline. The thought that someone else knew where I lived, and that Mark was somehow connected to it, made my blood run cold. The text was a desperate, clandestine warning from someone who wanted to help me, or perhaps just to protect themselves by protecting me. I knew I couldn't go to the police yet. I had no idea what Mark was involved in, and I didn't want to escalate the situation without understanding the full scope, potentially putting him in even greater danger. But I couldn't stay in the house either. I thought of my friend, Elena, a former police dispatcher who now worked in corporate security. She was discreet, level-headed, and knew how to assess a threat. I called her, my voice trembling as I explained the impossible text and the vague, unsettling discoveries. I didn't give her every detail, but enough to convey the urgency and the potential danger. Elena listened patiently. "Sarah, you need to get out of that house. Now. Pack a small bag, grab anything you think is evidence, and come to my place. Don't tell anyone where you're going." Her calm, authoritative tone cut through my panic. I took photos of the messages, the P.O. box details, and the ledger references on Mark's old phone. I dressed quickly, grabbed my purse, and a small backpack with a change of clothes. Before I left, I did one more thing. I found the contact for Mark's HR department. I sent an anonymous email, detailing a security concern related to an upcoming project Mark was involved in, mentioning the date I'd found and a vague reference to unauthorized information transfer. It was a shot in the dark, a way to get someone looking into it without directly accusing Mark or putting myself on the radar of whoever Silas was. I drove to Elena's, the short journey feeling like an escape. She had a our bedroom ready for me, and a cup of hot tea. We spent the rest of the night going over what I'd found, piecing together a terrifying picture. The P.O. box in Mesa, Elena discovered, was in a district known for shell companies and black market dealings, not legitimate business. The ledger likely referred to a record of illegal transactions. Mark, my quiet, meticulous husband, was tangled in something far beyond his engineering job. Mark landed the next morning. His first call wasn't to me, it was to his company's security. They had received my anonymous tip and, combined with some of their own internal monitoring, were already looking into things. He called me moments later, his voice frantic, laced with fear and a terrible regret. He confessed everything. He wasn't diverting designs for money, but because his parents, who lived in another state and were both battling serious health issues, had been threatened. Silas was a figure connected to an international industrial espionage ring, and they had coerced Mark into siphoning off sensitive aerospace component designs. The lock-the-door text, he revealed, had been sent by a junior member of Silas's crew, a young engineer who had a conscience, using Mark's phone during a brief, desperate moment of access, to warn me. He'd risked everything to send those 3 words. The company, armed with my anonymous tip, Mark's confession, and the evidence I'd gathered, moved swiftly. Mark was not arrested, but he lost his security clearance and, consequently, his job. He faced internal investigations and potential legal action, but his cooperation, and the digital evidence I'd provided, helped him avoid severe criminal charges. The ring was exposed, and Silas eventually apprehended, thanks in part to the information Mark provided. My marriage, however, was severely strained. Mark had betrayed my trust, not with another woman, but with a secret life that had endangered us both. He had chosen to protect his parents by putting me at risk, by building a wall of lies between us. We started therapy, a long, arduous process of rebuilding communication and trust. It was like living in a house after an earthquake. The structure was still there, but every creak, every shadow, felt like a reminder of how easily it could crumble. Months passed. Mark found a new job, a less prestigious one, in a different field, trying to rebuild his life, piece by piece. I continued my freelance work, but the sense of security I'd once felt was gone. The house, once a symbol of our shared life, felt different. I changed the locks, not just to keep danger out, but as a symbolic gesture, a way of taking back control. Sometimes, I still find myself looking at the brass knocker on our front door. It no longer feels solid, a guardian against the world. It's just a piece of metal, cold and heavy, a stark reminder that even the most secure-looking things can hide vulnerability, and that the real dangers aren't always outside, but sometimes, allowed in by the secrets we keep.